We recently spent one amazing month island hopping around the Philippines, so we thought we would put together all of our thoughts and top tips for you to help you better plan and prepare.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're megandmorgs. If you're new around here, we're currently on a 2-year backpacking trip around the globe, and yeah, we're here to share our itinerary, top tips and budget advice for the Philippines.
So we'll start with some basic information that you need to know before you go. So we had a free 30-day visa because we're British citizens. I'd recommend checking what applies to you. When you're there, you can also extend these visas, so it's a really easy process to do. There's loads of agencies who will do that for you and sort of hold your hands through the process.
If you want to do it yourself, you can just go to one of the government sites. You can put this into Google to find out where the nearest one to you is. So you can upgrade from your normal 30-day visa to a 59-day visa. We didn't need to do this, we just sort of spent 30 days in the country. We felt like this was enough to see what we want to see. But if you want to go a bit slower, maybe take your time, take in a few more of the places, then this is something that you should do.
The best time of year to go is between December to April. We were there May/June time, and honestly the weather wasn't too bad. Towards the end of our trip we did have sort of more windy and rainy weather, but it was never too bad that we wasn't able to do what we wanted.
Yeah, it was just that we had like a few more rainy days perhaps. You know, there was a typhoon that sort of went off the coast of us. It's just one of those things, but also you have the perks of travelling in an off-season or shoulder season time. You know, things aren't as busy, accommodation prices might be slightly cheaper. So these are the sort of things to weigh up when you're deciding when you go to the Philippines. So the Philippines currency is the peso. We were quite surprised that it was the peso just because we associate that with South American and Central American countries. But it worked out to be around 70 pesos to the British pound. I'll put some conversions up on the screen for some major currencies around the world. And getting money out was very easy throughout the country. There was plenty of ATMs available for you to do so, even on the smaller islands like Camigan or Siquijor. And once you get to the airport, you can do that very easily. As well as getting money out at the airport, we'd recommend you getting a SIM card there as well.
Yeah, so we got the smart SIM card. We found that we had coverage everywhere that we went.
Yeah, pretty much it was really good.
We got like a 30-day travel plan, so there's loads of different plans available depending on what sort of amount of data you think that you'll need for your time there. But we do recommend having a SIM, especially if you are solo travelling, just gives you that peace of mind.
Yeah, and also between us, we could split the cost, and you can hotspot, which is quite good. So you could get a big data plan with, say, like 40 gigabytes if you're a couple. One of you have it on your phone, maybe the person that often goes out to the shops or does a bit more of the adventurous side of things. That would be me. Maybe I'll go off to the gym and pick some stuff up on the way back. And then if you're out and about, you can just hotspot each other if you're on a journey, etc. And it works out that the cost is halved. So another nice little tip for you.
Before you arrive to the country, there's a number of different apps that we suggest you download onto your phone for arriving there. These will help and assist you at your time in the Philippines. So there's Grab. This is sort of one of the main ways to order transport. Obviously you can barter, but often Grab, particularly in areas like airports or ferry ports where they're putting the costs up, is the best way to go.
Yep, also Grab can give you a good idea about a price, as well as just Googling. So we often, Grab wasn't available in some of the smaller islands. However, if you Google how much did it cost to get from, say, Siquijor port to San Juan, that was a journey that we did. People said that they got it for around 250, 300 pesos. So we went in to the port knowing exactly how much like the top end that we should be paying was, and eventually we managed to negotiate down to I think 200, but it just gives you a good point of reference for negotiating if you can't use Grab.
Next up you have Hostelworld, Booking.com and Agoda. So these will probably be the apps that you primarily use to book accommodation for your time in the Philippines. Looking across all of them gives you a great idea of sort of what costs you should be paying and what's available.
Yeah, sometimes you might find a slightly cheaper price on Agoda versus Booking.com. There might be a different sort of room available. And also if there are places that say it's full, you can always get their number off of Booking.com, text them directly or WhatsApp them, and ask, are you sure you don't have any rooms for these available dates? And they might say, oh yeah, we have a spare. We can give it to you. So that's another little tip.
That's a great way of sometimes saving a bit of money as well, because the hotel isn't having to pay any commission to the booking site. You're just paying them directly, basically.
Yeah, sorry booking.com if you're watching this. Another really important app to have downloaded is Google Maps. This is what we primarily used to navigate around the country. So using the airport Wi-Fi, or even before you arrive, you can download the map for your area that you'll be staying in. That's a useful way of making sure that you'll always know where you're going no matter where you are. You just need Wi-Fi to do this, and it'll take a few seconds.
Another great app is the currency converter app. Often if you're travelling between countries, it can get a bit confusing knowing exactly how much things cost. Just pop the amount in pesos and it'll convert it for you to your local currency, so you're never being charged more than what you expect.
Although many people in the Philippines speak very good English, it's always handy to have Google Translate downloaded, and again, similar to Google Maps, you can download the Filipino language for offline use. Just another thing to have just in case you're trying to speak to someone that doesn't speak your language.
And you should never expect them to speak your language either.
No, unless you speak good Filipino, then you should never expect them to speak really good English, I guess.
We just wanted to mention a few things that you should definitely pack for your trip. So make sure you've got a good bug spray with a high percentage of DEET, a really good sun cream that you can trust, and then also a snorkel. It's essential. There's such good snorkeling in the Philippines, and if you're going to rent it every single time you want to go in, those costs are going to add up.
Yeah, over the time that you'll be there, you might be able to sort of buy a snorkel back home for that price. Plus, you have your snorkel for future trips that you decide to go on as well. So yeah, we definitely recommend that.
To us, it's a must.
Absolutely. To go along with those snorkeling trips, a dry bag or dry rucksack. Lots of people in the Philippines are selling these just because there's so many boat trips and snorkeling trips that go out. But this is really useful to have if you've got a little dry bag that you trust. They're handy, but it's probably better to have one of those like ocean packs, I think they call them. They're just the best for keeping your stuff safe. To go along with this, pack breathable clothing. It's hot, it's humid, it's tropical. If you haven't been to somewhere like this before, it can get really, really sweaty if you're wearing thick cotton clothing. I think one time Megan wore one of my thick cotton shirts for a hike, and it's just not very comfortable. Your skin can't breathe through it, the sweat can't evaporate, and you just
end
up
look
getting
like a
hot.
sweaty mess.
Yeah, don't take grey clothes either. I've got a grey vest, and every time I wore it, sweated straight through it. But yeah, breathable clothing, like this sort of top that I'm wearing now, like a polyester type, or even like one of those merino wool type fabrics, just something that's breathable.
Last but not least as well, if you are planning on hiring a scooter around the country, make sure to take an international driver's permit. Just means that you're never going to be caught out.
Because the Philippines is particularly touristy, especially in places like Palawan, where El Nido and Coron is, lots of people do travel with a suitcase. We like travelling with a rucksack just because it gives us a lot more flexibility. It's easy to just pick up if the roads are sort of like cobbly and difficult to roll the suitcase over, for example. But most of the transports, like the ferries, and obviously you'll be getting planes between the islands, jeepneys, tuk-tuks, etc. They will have space for you to sort of put your suitcase in if you need to. But yeah, we just prefer to sort of travel with a rucksack just because it's a lot easier.
Next up, we want to talk about your transport options available to you for your time in the Philippines. There's a wide array available, probably the most out of anywhere that we visited, and honestly this was the most expensive thing we found about travelling the country. So obviously you will be hopping between lots of islands just to maximise your time in the country. What I would recommend is trying to figure out a way to limit hopping between, because flights and ferries between the islands, it really adds up and it does get quite expensive.
Yeah, for our time there, I think we ended up on average spending around £10 a day, so around £300 in total. This is way more than we've spent anywhere else in Southeast Asia for travel. And yeah, this is just primarily down to the flights and ferries that we had to take between islands. For example, the flight between Manila and Coron takes 1 hour, but the price is £88. I'll put up the price equivalent. Or the ferry between Coron and El Nido cost us £40 each. That was only 5 hours. You can see that the prices for these transport options, have obviously been catered towards the fact that they know tourists are taking them, so they'll put the price up. One way that you might get a cheaper flight is booking in advance if you know exactly the dates that you're going to be travelling between places. As we kept checking closer to the dates of our flights and found that prices did sort of creep up towards the day, You know, it's not like times of old where, you know, flights last minute, you know, you could get them for really cheap. It seems like now they increase the prices closer because they think that people are desperate and will pay whatever they need to pay to get the flight.
Yeah, so definitely one of our top tips for the Philippines is if you are going to be taking internal domestic flights, book them as soon as possible, even as soon as you book in your international flights.
On the topic of sort of domestic flights, we didn't have a domestic flight that wasn't delayed longer than 1 hour. This is just something that seemed normal when we were there. None of the local people were sort of up in arms about it. It seemed like this was just what happened. So don't book short layovers. You know, if you've got a layover that's like 3 hours, I'd even be debating that, because we had a few delays that were like 5 hours. They say over the Tannoy, you know, your planes, it'll be arriving, it'll just arrive when it arrives, and that's just the norm. So yeah, make sure to not book your short layovers when you're
Save
there.
yourself some stress, honestly, it's not worth it. And most of the time as well, if your first flight is delayed, your second flight won't be covered by your insurance, because most likely you're travelling with 2 different companies.
Yeah, but one way to be covered is the fact that if you're sort of travelling with, say, Cebu Pacific on one flight from, say, Camigan to Cebu and then Cebu to Manila, something that we did when we were delayed, they made sure that we made our next flight because we were flying with the same company. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you've got 2 domestic flights back to back, try and make sure they're with the same company, because they're more likely to cover you for all this.
Yes.
Previously we already touched on the tricycles, tuk-tuks. Tricycles are a new mode of transport that we've never been in before, but they're pretty much exactly like a tuk-tuk, just a normal motorcycle that's been sort of like souped up and converted into a tricycle with seating for sort of 3 or 4 more people.
Or 7 or 8 locals.
Yeah, just as many people as they can fit in there. They were just the same as like a rickshaw or tuk-tuk, you know, you barter for the price. Easy to do, and they're everywhere. Another thing that was more popular in the more touristy places like El Nido, Coron and Palawan in general was like vans, minivans to get around, mostly filled with tourists. These are generally more expensive, but the best way to get around those sorts of places. It's very easy to do. You know, you go to like a central pickup location, they'll take you to where you need to go, say from El Nido to Port Barton and then Port Barton to Puerto Princesa. All very easy, slightly more expensive, but you're in Palawan, so what do you expect, sort of thing. Very popular with the locals is the jeepneys. These are for shorter journeys, basically like a mini bus sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's got the sort of like the sides and the back cut out, and lots of locals will sort of cram into these things, as many as they can fit in.
We travelled on these a couple of times, and one thing I would mention, if you have your huge bags, it can actually be quite difficult to find somewhere to put them because they are so busy. I mean, we were lucky enough to be able to fit them between our feet, but I don't think on every ride you'd be able to do that.
No, and we heard about a few people that we speak to on Instagram and things like that. They did take their big bag on these modes of transport, and they were charged like an extra fare as if the bag was another person. So if you don't mind doing that and you have to catch one of these jeepneys, then be prepared to do that.
They're a fun way to travel though, and obviously it's always good to travel with the locals, and we like to do that. It's cheap and cheerful. Yeah,
it's a local way to travel, something that was unique for us and probably unique to the Philippines. I haven't seen them anywhere else in the world.
So we got a local bus once for our time in the Philippines. We got it from Cebu down to Mobile. It was really quick and easy, had aircon, wasn't too expensive at all, and honestly there was so much space that we could just put our bags on the seats next to us, which we were advised to do.
Yep, and again, it's those big buses, you know, you can put your bags underneath, so you don't need to worry about being charged extra for your bag. We also got a bus from Mobile down to the south of Cebu Island to go towards the Liloan port when we had our big travel day. If you haven't seen that video, make sure to check that out, because that just shows how good the transport options in the Philippines are. Even though they might be a bit expensive, we were able to take, I think, like 7 or 8 modes of transport in that day, and managed to get from Mobile all the way to Siquijor, all in one day.
And we also took a bus across to Hagna, so I do lie, we took more than one. But honestly, they're a really great mode of transport.
Speaking of Siquijor, something we touched on earlier in the video, with the international driver's permits is renting a scooter. So we actually learned to ride a scooter when we were in Sikihor. We obviously didn't tell the people that we rented the bike from that we were learning for the first time, but Sikihor was a really great place for us to learn. The roads were flat for the most part, well paved and weren't busy at all, wide. Yeah, it was quite a good place to learn. And yeah, it's a nice way of getting around the islands on a little motorbike. It gives you complete freedom of where you want to go, you know. Overall, if you're doing like big days of going to multiple different places, it works out cheaper than if you're paying for tricycles. And yeah, like I said, it gives you the freedom. Next, we'll talk about accommodation. We talked previously that we booked all our accommodation with either booking.com, Agoda or Hostel World. Mostly booking.com, that's our go-to. But if you can't find anywhere there, go to Agoda. And if you prefer like hostels, you're solo travelling, or you just like that hostel kind of vibe, go for Hostel World. They're the best place to book your hostels with. Generally speaking, everywhere we stayed was lovely, but just make sure to look at the reviews before you book somewhere and go on the filters. I like the filters on booking.com. You can filter like that it's well rated, that it's got aircon, that it's got Wi-Fi, whatever you want. You can look for the price range. You know, you can make sure that you get the hotel that you want, basically.
Cost of accommodation, on average for our whole time in Philippines, it sort of averaged out about £7 a night per person. So obviously we're splitting the cost of a double room between us. Now I would say it was a lot more expensive in Palawan, particularly El Nido. We struggled to find like a good place for a decent price, and I think our average cost there was £10 each per night. So it is a significant difference. I mean, almost 50% more than what we were paying for the rest of the Philippines. So if you know you're going to El Nido, book that accommodation as soon as possible to get a good deal.
Yeah, these budget places will sell out the fastest, obviously, because most people are like you and us. You know, we want to get a good deal, and we haven't got, you know, unlimited money to be spending on accommodation, so the cheap places will book up fast. Everywhere we stayed, the hosts were lovely. They couldn't do enough to help you. You know, if you had any questions or queries, whether you wanted to book a tour, activities or onward transport, they were more than happy to help, and they're the people that are the most knowledgeable about these things after all. Do make sure to check online that you're getting a good price if you're booking through these people, but we never had any issues, and when we checked online they were offering us the exact price that we should be paying.
The next thing that we want to touch on, we don't want to dwell too much on it, but we do want to share our thoughts, our sort of taxes and fees that you'll experience travelling around the Philippines. So when you book your ferry ticket, you'll pay an initial cost for that ticket, and then you'll probably pay 2 or 3 fees on top of it. It would probably be best if it was all just included in the initial ticket, and then you wouldn't actually give it a second thought. But it was just a bit frustrating sometimes. You had to have lots of small notes on you and pay lots of different people for sort of environmental fees, port fees,
administration fees. It just, the list went on for all the different things. Throughout the country, we kind of just thought about all these taxes and fees as like an additional, like a visa cost that we didn't have to pay sort of to get into the country. They kind of got a bit annoying, and you kind of felt, you know, what's this really for? What's this really for? But you know, it's just the way it is in the Philippines. You can't argue with it. You just have to get used to it. If you want to travel the Philippines, you know, there's going to be taxes and fees. An example of these taxes and fees were, say you were to turn up to a tourist destination, maybe like a beach or something. Even the public beaches, so for example in Bohol, near on Pangalao Island, near Alona Beach, there's a section of beaches sort of slightly north of them. If you wanted to go on one of those beaches, there was a 100 peso fee to use a public beach, which we'd never seen anywhere that we'd been. When we were in Mobile, we were travelling to White Beach, and along the way there were 3 different fees that we had to pay. So we had to pay an initial environmental fee. We went through this checkpoint of just local people, not in uniform, you know, no official.
And they were just so persistent, and our tricycle driver was refusing to take us any further if we didn't pay. So we just felt a bit caught out, and we weren't really sure how honest it was.
Yeah, it over the time it kind of got a bit draining, the fact that everybody seemed like they were sort of trying to take a chunk out of the tourist pie, if you like, and everybody was trying to get their cut. and often, yeah, it didn't feel particularly honest about these things. And we know that there's disputes going on between the government and the people that are charging these environmental fees and taxes to tourists for, you know, reasons that aren't sanctioned by the government. But it's, at the moment, it's something that you're going to have to get used to. You either pay the fee and go, or you don't pay the fee and they won't let you use the beach or the waterfall, etc. But we understand, like, some of these fees are great. You know, they're important. You know, the port fees, that's probably going towards the maintenance of the port, or it's maybe going towards their workers' union or whatever.
And like I say, if those costs were hidden in our initial ferry ticket, we probably wouldn't even give it a second thought. But it's just something that we wanted to touch on with you today. The next topic that we will touch on for you today is food and drink. Honestly, we love the Filipino food. It was a lot of sort of barbecued meat and rice, not too many vegetables, which we missed, but where you can, just have fruit, smoothies to sort of account for that fact.
Yeah, exactly. Get some fibre in your diet, otherwise, you know, you might be in some toilet trouble at some point.
Yeah, so as I said, not the most vegetables, and when we were there, we didn't think it was too vegetarian or vegan friendly. I mean, we don't go out of our way to look for those style cafes, but it's just something to consider if you are travelling the Philippines as a vegan or a vegetarian.
Yeah, I think in the touristy places like El Nido, for example, I think there was a vegan cafe where they only sold vegan food. But if you're sort of out in the sticks more, maybe you're on one of the smaller islands like Camigan or whatever, you know, you're going to be eating more local food, and the locals, they don't eat vegetarian or vegan, trust me. So some dishes for you to try. The adobo dishes are great. Chicken adobo was really nice. They do sisig. And then for breakfast foods, they do like a tapasalog.
Or the salogs.
Or the salogs, yeah. You'll see when you get there, but there's like long salog, and which is like a sausage dish. The tapasalog is like a cooked meat with rice and egg. And yeah, it's just basically like a sweet meat of some variety with rice and egg, and that's the main staple breakfast. Maybe some fish as well. But Megan doesn't eat that sort of stuff for breakfast. It's just not like for her taste, and she was always able to find something like pancakes or toast or something like that, which was better for sweet tooth.
Food in general was really affordable. Obviously, if you are eating local, you can save a lot more money and do it a lot cheaper. We tried to mainly stick to local food. Lots of beach barbecues were had in our time there, and we spent on average £8.50 each per day on food and drinks. So for all of our meals and all of our drinks, we travel with a live straw bottle, which helps us keep those costs down, and that's something that you could maybe consider just to help reduce plastic consumption when you are buying bottled water.
Now we'd like to give you a little breakdown of our itinerary and some places that we didn't get to go to that we suggest that you might want to if you just have a look and see if there's something that you'd want to do. We only had the 30 days there, so we made sure to prioritise the places that we really wanted to go to.
There's also a lot of islands that we didn't get to go to, which are great for diving. So if you are into diving, then maybe you should have a look and see which islands would best provide those for you.
There's like Apo Island, Malapascua Island, those are the ones that sort of come to mind when thinking about that. But most people will be flying into Manila, and that's where you'll more than likely start your journey. We would recommend, if you're sort of following a similar itinerary to us, staying in an airport hotel. We made the mistake of like getting a hotel in the city because it was really cheap, but we ended up travelling for like 45 minutes in a grab across the city, which was expensive.
In rush hour.
In rush hour, but Manila's the most densely populated city in the world, so there's always going to be traffic, probably whatever time of day you arrive. Then stayed in our hotel, then the next morning we had to get a grab all the way back to the airport because we were leaving the next day.
And the cost of those 2 grabs and the hotel, it would have been cheaper to pay a little bit more and stay somewhere closer to the airport, so definitely consider that.
But don't spend long in Manila. If you're leaving to say go to Coron, just book an airport hotel and then leave the next day, or if you can get a flight out the same day, do that. If you want to explore the island around Manila more, you can go further north up to Mount Pinatubo. That's a very popular area for the hike, and see the old volcano where it erupted. and walk around the crater. There's also further down the island if you want to go towards Legazpi and I think Don Sol. You can snorkel with the whale sharks there. This isn't guaranteed, but it's a lot more of an ethical way of doing so. Again, it's luck, isn't it, if you get to see the whale sharks in their natural environment, but it's a lot nicer than the forced tourism experience, if you like, that you get if you're snorkeling with them down in Cebu Island in Oslo, isn't it? Yeah, but we'll touch on that a bit later, and we did in our video where we visited Cebu Island, so if you want to hear more about our opinions on that, be sure to check that out. After we left Manila, we flew across to Coron. That was our expensive flight that cost £88. Make sure to book that in advance and see if you can get it any cheaper. But we'd recommend sort of at least 4 nights in Coron. There was plenty to do, wasn't there?
Yeah, I really liked Coron. I think that was honestly one of my favourite islands that we visited. There's so much to do. We really recommend the ultimate Coron boat tour. It's fairly expensive. It's not too bad for what you actually get.
1,500 pesos, wasn't it?
So,
I'll put the conversion up on the screen now for you for that.
I think it was definitely worth the cost. Honestly, it was busy, but for a good reason. You know, we had lots of amazing stops. We made a full video if that's something that you're wanting to consider. We also did a DIY trip to Siete Pecados, which had amazing snorkeling, and we actually hired our own boat captain for a few hours who came out and snorkeled with us.
Yeah,
that was really good.
That was a great day.
There's the viewpoint up at Coron, great sunset spot, so go up there in the evenings.
Yeah, I think it's called the Mount Tapias hike, and there's the Coron sign. Looks a bit like the Hollywood sign. And,
Don't wear a thick shirt.
That was the hike I was talking to you about. After your 4 nights or so in Coron, then you'll be getting your other expensive ferry from Coron across to El Nido. And El Nido is probably the most popular and well talked about places to visit in the Philippines.
So that transport link between Coron and El Nido, I do just want to touch on. If you are getting the regular £40 ferry, book that as soon as you get to Coron because it does sell out. If not, something that we actually really wanted to do but was slightly out of our budget, there's a 3-day, 2-night boat expedition between the 2 islands, which looks amazing. You island hop your way between the 2 places, and honestly, we've heard really great things about it.
Yeah, we spoke to a few people when we were there that did it, and they said it was one of the best things they've done, like travelling all together. So definitely recommend it if you've got the budget. I think it was around £250 when we looked and when we spoke to people. So yeah, if it's in your budget, go for it. In El Nido, I think we spent 5 nights, just because we wanted to make sure that we had enough time to do all the great things that they have in El Nido. We visited Nakpan Beach. That was a really great day. We did another boat tour. It was around a similar price to what we did in Coron.
I think it was slightly more expensive because we visited Big Lagoon and we hired kayaks, so there is some additional cost. Just something to look out for if you're thinking about doing the boat tour. A and C are the most popular, so have a look at the itineraries and see which would suit you best. We also visited Las Cabanas Beach, spent the whole day there, and that was really nice place for sunset. There's also the zip line across Las Cabanas Beach, which is super fun.
Yeah, and then finally there's like a viewpoint at the top of El Nido. You can either do your own sort of trip with a guide where you sort of climb up a almost near vertical face, but we'd probably recommend, if you want to see that view, go and do the I think it's called the canopy walk, El Nido canopy walk, and you're sort of strapped in with a helmet and there's a nice like steady
the
path
view
walk
looks
up
great.
there. It looks like a really great view. But yeah, that's all the main things for El Nido. You'll probably be getting in a van like we talked about previously, and then heading down to Port Barton. We probably recommend spending 2 nights or so in Port Barton.
In Port Barton, one of the best things to do is sort of get a return ferry to the nearby White Beach. You can also beach hop along the way. We saw some people who hired scooters and they didn't look so great after a day driving around those roads, so I'd stick with the boat, to be honest. Unfortunately, we didn't have the best weather, but that was something that we wanted to do. In the evenings, go to Coco Rico's for free drinks. No catch, you just get free drinks. It's a really great place to meet other backpackers.
Yeah, it's a nice hostel to stay at as well if you're into staying at hostels. The food was quite good there. We ate there quite a lot for lunch and stuff like that, reasonable prices.
After that, we then got the minibus slash shuttle
Yeah.
over to Porto Princesa. So we only had one night there, as that's where we were flying out of. If you have longer and you've got the budget, there's the Underground River National Park, and that's definitely something to consider if you are wanting to do that.
Yeah, it looks really beautiful. So the main reason we went to Porto Princesa was that was where we could get our flight to Cebu Island. That was an easy, quite cheap flight actually.
Yeah, I think it works out about £20 each. But one thing to know is be careful if you are trying to get away without checking baggage.
Yeah.
We flew with Air Asia, I believe, and unfortunately Morgan got caught for the first time with oversized hand luggage. So
I think in these smaller airports they're a lot more conscious about if you've got a big rucksack. They're more conscious about it. Mainly I think because you're going on smaller planes and there's less people on the planes. And they're just, I think they're just a lot more vigilant about it, whereas in the main airports where we've been it's a bit less so. You know, run it at your own risk sort of thing. But yeah, that was the only place that we got caught out, and when we were at these smaller airports in future, we made sure that we didn't have any overweight baggage that we were trying to sneak on as hand luggage. Cebu Island, we'd probably recommend having maybe 4 to 6 nights depending on what you want to do there. A few people stayed in Cebu City, but if you want to see the best of the Philippines and you've only got a month, I would probably avoid it. We just got the bus straight from Cebu City to Mobile. We had 4 nights in Mobile, but again you could spend longer because there's loads to do there. We did the canyoneering experience for a day.
highly recommend that.
That was probably one of the best things that we did in the whole of the Philippines.
It was so much fun.
It really was, really, really, really good.
We did a DIY sardine snorkeling trip, so
Yeah.
don't worry about paying for a tour, just go out on your own. And we also visited White Beach, which was lovely for an afternoon or a beach day. Lots of waterfalls in the area, so if you are confident on a scooter, maybe hire one for the day and go around exploring.
Many people, when they visit Cebu Island, they head down to Oslob for a night or two to snorkel with the whale sharks. We talked about it previously, we won't go over it again, but it's a bit of a forced experience where they feed the whale sharks and you go and swim with them, and it's a bit all a bit false and unethical for us.
All I'll say is do your own research and make that decision at the end of the day. We've done our research and it just wasn't for us.
Yeah, it didn't align with our values, but it might align with yours, and you know, it is really beautiful at the end of the day. You get to swim with some of the largest animals on earth, so it's up to you. From Mobile, we had our amazingly long travel day to get to Siquijor. If you can do this all in one day, hats off to you. I think we had to get 7 or 8 different modes of transport between tricycles, local buses, ferries, etc. to get all the way from Mobile to Siquijor Island. And we probably recommend that you have sort of 4 nights in Siquijor. It was really nice. It would have been better if we didn't have a big storm that was sort of like causing a lot of rainfall, wind, bad weather for sort of like the beaches. We had there was a few incidents on the island with like the main beaches being closed because of like police investigations, and then some resorts were closed, which meant that the beaches were closed. It was unfortunate, basically.
Yeah, the island of Siquijor, it does look amazing. So many beautiful beaches, waterfalls. Just unfortunately our time there, we were unlucky, but you can't be lucky everywhere, so we still had a great time and just made the most of it. From Siquijor, we then got the ferry across to Bohol. We stayed in 2 different locations in Bohol. So first we got a jeepney across to Panglao Island. This was great, and we've heard mixed reviews about Panglao Island, but we loved it. It was very relaxing, very beautiful. We snuck our way into a few resorts where we spent the day. Honestly, we didn't do too much, but I think that was very nice and needed. Yeah,
I mean, there's some good restaurant options in Panglao Island as well, and like Megan said, it's kind of like a chill beach sort of vibe there. So just go and find yourself a nice beach, maybe have a drink, eat some good food, chill out for a few days, and yeah, just enjoy the beach.
From Panglao Island, we then got a jeepney up and then a bus across to Hagner. So most people don't actually stay in Hagner. The reason we did is because that's where our ferry to Camigan in a few days' time departs from. But we're so glad that we made the decision to stay there, and honestly it was just full of locals and we had a really great time there.
Yeah, we were going to rent motorbikes and then go around a few of the spots in the nearby area, maybe visit sort of like near the Chocolate Hills. Up there was a strawberry farm, a couple of different waterfalls, etc. But all the motorcycle rental places and the reviews online looked a bit dodgy. Like, I think someone said a review like they tried out the brakes on one of the downhill sections and the brakes weren't working and
or
stuff
they
like
were
that.
overcharging tourists
Yeah,
and things
I think
like
it seemed
that.
a bit expensive as well. So we just spoke to one of the tricycle drivers and we went around with him for the day.
Yeah,
It was
so we
really
bought
nice.
at a price that we were happy with.
Yeah.
We sort of put some waterfalls and things on a list, and then that's where we did what we did for the day.
Yeah, it was nice. So we had 2 nights in Hagner and then 2 nights on Panglao Island. You could probably spend 3 nights in each and still have plenty to do.
Yeah, Bohol was great. I really recommend that. From Hagner, we then got the ferry across to Camigan, which was Morgan's favourite island of the trip.
For
and
sure.
honestly, it was amazing. Not touristy at all, I
No,
would say.
The least touristy place.
It was mainly locals, and a lot of Filipino people travel within their own country. So there was a lot of Filipino tourists, but it was really good. So much to do.
Yeah, we had plenty to do. So like renting a bike there is probably the best thing to do to get around, because you can do a full lap around the island in like an hour and a half.
The coastal road is stunning as well. Like,
Really
it's such
pretty.
a beautiful drive and a beautiful island.
Yeah, you've got the volcanoes in the centre of the island, because Camigan's the most volcanic island in the world, which was quite an interesting fact that we learned there. But there's like the old Spanish church that's nearby to the sunken cemetery where you can snorkel, and that's near the old volcano that you can hike up to. You know, the list goes on about the
There's
stuff
White
you can do.
Island,
Of course.
Monteague Island. I'd honestly just recommend going for maybe 3-4 nights, making the
Yeah.
most of it. There's so much to do. Lots of great restaurant options available. One of our favourites.
Yeah, that's pretty much enough for you to sort of spend a month in the Philippines between those different islands. You can spend more or less time on each of the islands and the different places depending on what sort of fits your schedule best. Like Megan said before, there's a few places like Apo Island and Malapascua Island that will be better for divers.
Yes, and there's also a few islands that we didn't visit that we wanted to, but we just couldn't fit it into our itinerary this time. I mean, if you look at the Philippines on a map, I'm sure you can see how many islands there are. You can't visit them all. It's just an excuse to go back next time.
Absolutely. So we'll finish the video by sort of just touching on our general opinions of the Philippines and how we felt when we were travelling. We felt safe at all times as well when we were travelling the Philippines. We didn't have any sort of negative interactions with local people or anything like that, and as a result of this we probably feel like it would be a country that would feel safe and comfortable travelling if you were a solo traveller. I think we've seen plenty of people on YouTube that have done this as well, and they've also had sort of like a great experience just like what we did.
I think the locals are super friendly.
For sure.
You can tell that they love the Philippines, which makes you love it even more. We had a great time there. It was really beautiful. As we mentioned, it probably wasn't the easiest country to travel around, but it is a country full of islands, so you know that going there. You just got to expect that.
Absolutely. And one final thing that we'll touch upon is the fact that the Philippines was slightly more expensive than other places in Southeast Asia. We probably put it up there with the cost of like a Thailand or something like that, rather than like an India, Sri Lanka, Vietnam type thing where you might spend say £20 a day. We spent around £30 a day just because of that increased transport cost, really.
Yeah. We really hope you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully some of our top tips and itineraries helps you plan your Philippines trip. We honestly can't recommend it enough. And if you have any questions at all that you'd like us to answer, drop them below in the comments.
For more content, our budget breakdowns and just general sort of tips and tricks for the Philippines, you could also head over to our Instagram, also at megandmorgs. Meg's put together lots of nice reels and yeah, just posts that might help you out with your trip, as well as a Philippines travel guide in written form that again might aid in helping you plan your trip for your visit there.
If you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, please make sure to like and subscribe to our page, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.